Welcome back to the Top Notch Documentaries YouTube channel. In this episode of the Serial Killer series, I shall be focusing on the currently unsolved case of the Long Island serial killer. I hope you enjoy. The case of the Long Island serial killer, or LISK, is an unidentified and at-large murderer who has avoided detection for more than 20 years. The killer is extremely cautious, methodical and savage when it comes to his murders of escorts and, in one case, a young toddler. The case of the Long Island serial killer likely began all the way back in 1996. It was April 20th of that year when two legs wrapped in plastic bags washed up on Fire Island, specifically at Blue Point Beach. People walking along the beach had come across the grisly discovery of two human legs. They were determined to belong to a female homicide victim who was nicknamed Fire Island Jane Doe because she could not be connected to any reported missing persons cases. Who was this woman, and who was the sick person responsible for her brutal killing and dismemberment? Police wanted answers but received no credible leads which would help to identify Fire Island Jane Doe or her murderer. It's believed that the victim died earlier the same year and her legs showed signs of scarring, along with possible prior surgery to her left ankle. And her nails were also painted with red toenail polish. The high probability that the victim had undergone some type of ankle surgery in the past generated no vital developments in the case, much to the dismay of the investigators. The case quickly went cold. The following year, it was June 28th of 1997, and the torso and legs of an African-American female would be found by a hiker in Hempstead Lake State Park, New York. Nicknamed Peaches given the peach tattoo on her left breast, her torso was discarded in a green plastic container, along with a towel and pillowcase. Her estimated age is between 18 and 30 years old, and an autopsy revealed that she had died less than 3 days prior to the gruesome discovery. Was this another victim of the killer responsible for snatching away the life of Fire Island Jane Doe? Both women had been dismembered, but that was the only confirmed link at the time. It would not be until November the 19th of the year 2000 when hikers uncovered another torso of a woman in the Long Island Pine Barrens in Manorville, New York. Given the lack of identifiable torso features and no leads as to her identity, she was given the name Manorville Jane Doe. Her torso had been placed into garbage bags and left in the woods, and an autopsy would reveal her estimated time of death as being sometime in September of the same year. Manorville would hold the torso and legs of another female victim which would be found on July 26th of 2003. Her identity surfaced the next year in 2004 based on her mutilated back tattoo being recognised. The torso belongs to 20-year-old Jessica Taylor, who had last been seen in Manhattan on July the 21st. Taylor was working as a prostitute near the Port Authority bus terminal in New York. Jessica Taylor had been identified as a homicide victim, but that was about it. There were no clues as to who her killer was and if the previous 3 victims were even connected to her murder. Given the dismemberment, it appeared likely that the other women were all victims of the same killer, but the police wouldn't be able to put the pieces together for a very long time. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, aged 25, was last seen in Manhattan on July the 9th of 2007. She had been reported missing in Norwich, Connecticut on July 14th, but all traces of her movements had gone cold. She had travelled to New York to meet up with a client from the website Craigslist. Her family were not aware of her own risky profession. She was making money escorting online, interacting with clients on Craigslist. Her family would not get any answers until a few years later. Melissa Barthelemy, aged 24, was last seen in the Bronx in July of 2009. She had received a $1,000 offer from a client over on Long Island. She was never heard from again. Around the time she went missing, her younger sister received a phone call from a person claiming responsibility for Melissa's murder. Is this Melissa's little sister? Yes, it is. Do you know what your sister is doing? She's a whore. Horrified by the low voice on the other end of the phone, Melissa's sister was terrified and sickened by the sadistic person using her sister's phone. The calls had been made from various busy areas in New York at night. The taunts really underlined the sadistic side to the killer and the desire to torment Melissa's younger sister. The killer only wanted to communicate with her and nobody else. However, in August of 2009, The calls discontinued because the media reported on the story. Like Maureen, Melissa was working as an escort and used Craigslist, and like Maureen, she had simply vanished. It was a year later, on June 6th of 2010, and Megan Waterman, aged 22, was last seen on hotel surveillance footage in Hauppauge, New York, at 1:30 a.m. She had left to meet with a client and had not taken her phone with her, leaving it in her hotel room. Like with the previous two women, Megan was operating as an escort and using Craigslist to meet with clients. Only 3 months, and it was September the 2nd of 2010 when Amberlyn Costello, aged 27, was last seen at her home on Long Island. She had agreed to meet with a client who had offered her $1,500 for services. The client had called her around 3 or 4 times. It would not be until December the 11th of 2010 that a shocking discovery would be made. Human skeletal remains and victim jewellery would be uncovered along Ocean Parkway at Gilgo Beach, Long Island. The first body found belonged to Melissa Barthelemy, and 3 more skeletal remains would turn up just days later. The investigation into the discoveries of skeletal remains along the desolate stretch of road would continue into 2011. As more remains of the immediate area had police turning up remains of all 4 women, dubbed the Gilgo Beach 4. Adding to the horror, the rest of the remains of the women found in the late 90s to early 2000s also surfaced in the same radius, and 3 more bodies were also uncovered along Ocean Parkway. They included an Asian male in women's clothing and a young female toddler who was connected to Peaches. It was her mother. Shannon Gilbert, whose bizarre disappearance had initiated the discovery of a graveyard along Ocean Parkway, had run away from a client's house on May 1st of 2010 after making a 911 call claiming that people were trying to kill her. She had been found deceased in December of 2011. Her death is strange to say the least, and it's unsure whether she is connected to the case. She is not officially linked to the case, and I'm still conflicted about if she could be a victim of the killer or not. The Long Island serial killer showed masterful manipulation skills and seemed to demonstrate careful selection of his victims. He convinced Megan Waterman to leave her phone in her hotel room and appeared to manipulate his victims on the phone prior to meeting with them. Shannon doesn't seem to fit the victim profile because she arrived in the area with a driver. However, her death situation is weird and unexplained. Do you believe that Shannon is a victim of the same killer? The Long Island serial killer is without a doubt familiar with Long Island. Ocean Parkway is an ideal spot for hiding human remains. At night there are no light sources to expose this killer's twisted activities. It's been leaked that the bodies of the Gilgo Beach 4 were found in burlap sacks, which makes sense given the fact that the official victim connections had the earliest victims being found in either bags or plastic tubs. The Asian male and young toddler don't immediately tie in to the brutal murders. However, given the Asian male's attire, it seems as if he was operating in the sex industry. The young toddler probably joined her mother, Peaches, to meet up with a client. Questions have been raised as to why the killer dismembered his earlier victims but left the Gilgo Beach 4. The earliest victims were more than likely operating from the streets. If the killer was noticed picking them up by other working girls, then it would make sense that he dismembered them, mutilated identifying tattoos, and spread the remains across Long Island. He adapted over the years by using computers to hunt for victims and was confident that he would not be connected to his crimes, hence the Gilgo Beach 4 disposal locations and phone calls in 2009. In my opinion, the killer's downfall was using the internet and mobile phones. I'm sure that law enforcement has been focusing on technology as a means to bring this sadistic killer to justice. Other speculation about the killer focuses on if the killer is tied into law enforcement. This is a tricky one because anything is possible. There does seem to be police corruption in the area, but I don't buy that the killer is involved in law enforcement. I feel like this killer is more so super arrogant rather than being super smart, and was very comfortable with leaving victim jewellery and other items like garbage bags and plastic tubs at the crime scenes because he would go back to them from time to time, and also because of his narcissism. Since 2011, very few new details have come from this case. A belt, likely the killer's, was shown in 2020, and it goes to show that law enforcement is keeping their information close to their chest. Whether they are close to cracking the case is uncertain, but I wouldn't be surprised if new unexpected progress comes out in the next few years. There have been suspects over the years, but I don't buy them being the killer, and neither does law enforcement. Hopefully, the Long Island serial killer will be brought to justice in the near future, and victim families can get some answers. This has been another episode of the Serial Killer series. As always, thanks for watching.